Dear friends, God has a mysterious way of calling people. And the ways of the Lord are indeed mysterious. Today we are celebrating the memorial of St. Gregory the Great. But when we try to follow the itinerary of this great saint, this great pope, this great doctor of the church, we indeed discover how the ways of the Lord are mysterious. Gregory was born into a great family, and he became the prefect of Rome. The prefect of Rome. So administrating the city. Well, it was no longer the Rome where the emperor was, because the Vandals and other people have already made the imperial throne to disappear. So the emperor was now in Constantinople. But this man became the prefect of the city of Rome. And he worked as a prefect, and he organized the city, and he was well appreciated in his work. At one point, he decided that, no, I should no longer continue with this administrative work. So he decided to transform his house into a monastery, to become a monk in his own house. So that is where he was living, praying, fasting, studying scriptures. He became very well versed in scriptures in his house. But you know, holiness attracts. He was the prefect of Rome, now resigned to become a monk in his house. The Pope of that time, Pope Pelagius II, said, I need this man. So he made him his deacon, to work closely with him. And of course you can imagine, the one who was the prefect of the city, becoming a deacon, in terms of administration of charity, or how to administer the diocese, you can have somebody on whom you can count. So this is what we see with Gregory became the deacon to the Pope. After some times, the Pope wanted him to go to Constantinople and to be what we call today is Louison. So he was there. He was there in today's Turkey, in the east, trying to follow what was going on within the church, and in conjunction with the Patriarch of Constantinople, and also what was going on politically and administratively in that part of the world. After some time, the Pope called him back, come, and he made him his secretary in Rome. So he worked for the Pope as the secretary until the Pope died. And the reputation of this man and his holiness made people not to hesitate to have him become the next Pope, the next Bishop of Rome. The one who was before the prefect of the city is now the Bishop of Rome. So the clergy, the people, the Senate, they said Gregory should become the next Bishop of Rome, should become the Pope. He hesitated. He didn't want to run away. He was trying to see how he can eclipse himself, he can disappear. But eventually he accepted. So he became Pope in the year 590. And for 14 years, he worked tirelessly. He worked tirelessly for the people of Rome and for the church. And you see how God works. So the administrative skills he had, and his knowledge of politics, and of course his living as a monk and his spiritual life, all came together for the greater glory of God. To the extent that when it comes to temporal things, apart from helping the people in terms of social justice, in terms of assisting the people who were in need, especially the poor, there was the great threat of the Lombards. The Lombards were people from Northern Europe, they say that they come from South Scandinavia. So they were the people going to invade many people in Europe. So they were threatening to enter Rome and to take possession of Rome. And this Pope had to negotiate and find a way to spare the lives of the people. So his knowledge of secular things, and the fact that he was a prefect, it helped him also in negotiating the peace for the people of Rome. So he was known as the man who protected his people. But he was also a man burning with a zeal to announce the gospel of Christ. Actually, in England, it is a feast. It is a feast because it was Pope Gregory the Great who sent missionaries to go and evangelize England, to make them Christians. So today it is a feast in England. So not just England, but other territories as well, because he was burning with the zeal, with the love of God, and he wanted the people he wanted nations to know about Christ and his gospel. Now, the man we are celebrating today is known as Gregory the Great. Great Magnus. Magnus is the Great. So, it's Gregory the Great. But you know, Gregory the Great, he himself, he never saw himself as a great man. Actually, the title he preferred as the Bishop of Rome, as the Pope, which he himself created, is Servus Servorum Dei, the servant of the servants of God. That is how he saw himself. That I am kind of a slave working for the servants of God. And that is how he understood his ministry. In whatever way he was doing, whether it be in spiritual teaching and in assisting every human person, he saw himself only as the servant of the servants of God. That is a title. If you see all the titles of the popes, that one comes. Servus Servorum Dei, the servant of the servants of God. That came from Gregory the Great. So, through his life, we see how greatness is redefined. And this comes from the gospel. That is why the gospel passage is actually the one which describes most the spirituality and the life of this man whose memory we are celebrating. In the gospel, Jesus is saying something fundamental for all of us. The thing is this: Jesus is not against being great. The disciples were discussing among themselves to know who is the greatest among them. And then Jesus did not come and say, hey, you shouldn't be talking about greatness among yourselves. It is a bad thing to aspire to be great. Don't talk about it. No, I don't want you to discuss about greatness. That's not what Jesus said. That's what Jesus did. What Jesus said and did was to tell them what it means to be great in the sight of God. That if you want to be great, the greatest among you must behave as the youngest. He must be at the service of all. So that is greatness properly understood. So Jesus is not saying that it is bad to aspire to be great. No. If you want to aspire to be great, if you want to be great, if you want to be the first, then make yourself the servant and the slave of others, of all, just like himself. He came in order to serve and not to be served, and give his life as a ransom for the multitude. So this is greatness according to God. The greatness Christ has come to show humanity. That With Saint Gregory the Great, we understand that actually, the greater you are, the more humble you should become. That greatness is revealed in humility. You know, in ordinary human wisdom, it's as if they don't go hand in hand. That the one who is great is the one who is dominating. And then if you are humble, you are counted as good for nothing. But that is not the way God sees things. Actually, God is so almighty that he can make himself the least of all. So if you want to understand that very well, go and read again Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 to 11. Although he was in the form of God, Jesus did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself, the kenosis in Greek. He emptied himself, and he took the form of a servant, becoming human being, a servant, a doulos, a slave, and accepting to die, which died the death on the cross. And because he went so low, now God gave him the name which is above every other name, above all names. So that now every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord. That is the greatness of according to God. Revealed in humility. The opposite of Satan. Satan, he wants to become like God. He wants to be like the Almighty One, like the Most High. And what happens is now cast down to the lowest, to the lowest point. So, greatness is revealed in humility, in service. I will end with an example which shows that it's not just theory. Actually, it is even how humanity, in one way or the other, recognizes the greatness of people. In September 1997, within the space of a few days, 2 famous people died. One, known as Mobutu Sese Seko Ngwendo wa Zabanga, president of former Zaire. He died in Morocco. Around the same period, another person died, and that person is Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Most welcome. Mother Teresa of Calcutta. She died at the same period. And now, they asked Kabila, the Laurent Désiré, the Munze, asked him the question, your predecessor has died. What do you have to say about it? I remember very well, because I listened to the news at that time. He said, there are many people who are dying at the hospital Mama Yemu of Kinshasa. You journalists, you don't come to ask me questions about these people. And then Mobutu dies, and then you are coming to ask me a question. For me, it's like any other human being. But, dear friends, go to YouTube and watch a program, a film, a documentary, Mobutu Roi du Zaire. You are going to see how people were worshipping. I'm using the verb to worship. Worshipping the man. Some of the attributes we have for God, people were singing and giving those attributes to a human being. Mobutu Roi du Zaire. And then even before the news, 8 p.m. news, you see Mobutu coming from the clouds. So just like, you know, the Son of Man, the book of Daniel was talking about, coming from the clouds and then path and then begin to speak. So children thought that this man was immortal, that he was a divine being. Now follow the rest of the story, how he was kicked out of power and then became a fugitive and was buried in a foreign land with about a dozen of people surrounding him. See how he was eating his food before he died. It's a very beautiful thing. But this is somebody who was taught to be a great man, moving from victory to victory. I don't want to give other examples, because it might stretch out the Almighty, and then maybe some might stop to come to the Mass. But there are many people like that in our continent, in our world, who thought of themselves as being great. And yet people no longer remember them as great people. But then you see Mother Teresa, a very poor woman, who gave her life for the poor people without making headlines or seeking the fame of this world. It is true that the journalists were after her and like this, like that. But this humble woman became an honorary citizen of India. And she had very big funerals in India. India is a country of about 3% of Christians, majority Hindus. But the testimony this woman, this Catholic nun gave, touched people, not just Catholics, not just Christians, Hindus, Muslims, different religions all over the world, they remember her. So she got a Nobel, she won a Nobel Peace Prize, honorary citizen of India, but now she is a saint. So you see the greatness. Humility, the humility of people like Gregory or Mother Teresa made them to be saints. The other ones, I don't know what they became. It is God's work. It is God's knowledge. We have nothing to say about that, about the final situation in eternity. But you see, greatness is revealed through service. So the greater you are, the more humble you should become. So we are going to pray to God to give us that same spirit, that will not complain, that people are coming, they are kind of disturbing us, they are doing this or that. Yes, let's give our lives for the people, and God himself is going to remember us. Because whatever you do for God, God will always remember you. Amen.